There's something deeply satisfying about watching a predator finally face consequences. The trembling voice, the desperate pleas for sympathy, the pathetic attempts to rebuild a reputation that should have been buried years ago. For Kevin Spacey, the reckoning has been swift, brutal, and absolutely deserved. Looking at him today, bankrupt, unemployable, and radioactive in Hollywood.
Where do you live now? Well, it's funny you asked that question, because this week, where I have been living in Baltimore, is being foreclosed on. My house is being sold at auction.
Why is it being foreclosed?
Because I can't pay the bills that I owe.
It's hard to believe this is the same man who once commanded $20 million per film and had the entire entertainment industry at his feet. But between those 2 points lies a story of systematic abuse, manipulation, and a career built on the suffering of others. What we're witnessing isn't the tragic fall of a misunderstood artist. It's the long overdue collapse of a carefully constructed facade that hid decades of predatory behavior.
Because I can promise you this. If I didn't pay the price for the things we both know I did do, I'm certainly not going to pay the price for the things I didn't do.
And to understand why Kevin Spacey's downfall was not just inevitable, but necessary, we need to go back to the beginning. Kevin Spacey Fowler was born in 1959 in South Orange, New Jersey, into what can only be described as a dysfunctional household. His father, Thomas Fowler, was reportedly abusive and described by Spacey himself as a Nazi sympathizer and racist. His mother, Kathleen, struggled to hold the family together while dealing with her husband's violent outbursts. This traumatic childhood would later be weaponized by Spacey's defenders as an excuse for his behavior, the classic hurt people narrative. But millions of people survive abusive childhoods without becoming predators themselves. What happened to Kevin Spacey as a child was tragic. What he chose to do with that trauma as an adult was criminal. From an early age, Spacey showed an uncanny ability to manipulate and perform. He was expelled from multiple schools for inappropriate behavior, including sexually harassing female classmates. Even as a teenager, the warning signs were there. But rather than getting help, Spacey learned to weaponize his charm and talent to avoid consequences. He discovered acting in high school and immediately recognized it as the perfect cover. Here was a profession that rewarded deception, that celebrated the ability to become someone else entirely. For someone already living a lie, it was the ideal career choice. Spacey's early career was marked by methodical calculation disguised as artistic passion. He studied at Juilliard, where he reportedly made his first industry connections he would later exploit in ways that should have sent him to prison decades earlier. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Spacey built his reputation one calculated move at a time. He appeared in supporting roles in films like Working Girl and Glengarry Glen Ross, each performance demonstrating his ability to embody sleazy, manipulative characters with disturbing authenticity. Looking back, it's clear he wasn't acting. He was just being himself. His breakthrough came with the 1995 film The Usual Suspects, where he played the manipulative criminal mastermind Kaiser Soze. The irony is almost too perfect. Here was a real-life predator playing a fictional one, using his genuine experience with deception and manipulation to deliver what critics called a masterful performance. The film's twist ending, where the seemingly harmless character is revealed as the architect of elaborate deception, serves as a chilling parallel to Spacey's own life. But Spacey's true masterpiece wasn't on screen. It was the elaborate persona he constructed off-screen. He cultivated an image as a serious actor, a patron of the arts, a mentor to young talent. He spoke eloquently at award shows about craft and dedication, about the responsibility that comes with influence. He positioned himself as an elder statesman of the industry, someone who cared deeply about nurturing the next generation of performers. Every word was a lie. Spacey understood that the entertainment industry runs on hope and desperation. Young actors will endure almost anything for a chance at success. and he exploited that vulnerability with surgical precision. He would identify targets, usually young men in their teens or early 20s, often from modest backgrounds with limited industry connections. These were people who couldn't afford to lose opportunities, who had everything to lose and nothing to gain by speaking out against him. By the 2000s, Spacey had achieved the kind of power in Hollywood that made him untouchable. His performance in American Beauty earned him an Oscar and cemented his status as one of the finest actors of his generation. The film itself, about a middle-aged man's inappropriate obsession with a teenage girl, takes on disturbing new meaning when viewed through the lens of what we now know about Spacey's real-life predilections. In 2003, Spacey was appointed artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre in London, a prestigious position that gave him access to an endless stream of young British actors. For 11 years, he ran that institution like his personal kingdom, creating what investigators would later describe as a cult of personality that enabled widespread abuse. The Old Vic became Spacey's most sophisticated operation. Under the guise of mentoring promising talent, he would invite young actors to private dinners, exclusive parties, and intimate masterclasses. These weren't educational opportunities. They were auditions for victimhood.
People who came forward used to work here either as actors or technicians. The Old Vic says Kevin Spacey's behaviour ranged from making people feel uncomfortable to sexually inappropriate conduct.
Spacey would identify the most vulnerable, usually those struggling financially or professionally, and gradually escalate his behavior until assault became inevitable. What makes the Old Vic period particularly heinous is how Spacey weaponized the theater's reputation. This wasn't just any venue. It was an institution with over 200 years of history, associated with the greatest names in British theater. Young actors felt honored to be there, grateful for any attention from its artistic director. That gratitude was systematically exploited. Then came the House of Cards in 2013, and with it, a level of power and cultural influence that dwarfed everything Spacey had achieved before. Netflix handed him not just a starring role, but executive producer credits, giving him unprecedented control over casting, crew hiring, and set culture. He became the face of Netflix's original programming push, earning a reported $500,000 per episode while building what amounted to a new hunting ground on every production set. The show's premise, a ruthless politician who destroys anyone standing between him and power, served as another chilling parallel to Spacey's real life. Frank Underwood's willingness to manipulate, threaten, and destroy his enemies wasn't acting. It was autobiography. The character's casual cruelty, his ability to present a charming facade while plotting someone's destruction, his sense of absolute entitlement, all of it came from a very real place. But power without accountability is a dangerous thing. During the House of Cards years, multiple crew members and guest actors reported inappropriate behavior on set. Spacey would corner young male actors in trailers, make unwanted advances during rehearsals, and create an atmosphere where saying no to Kevin Spacey meant saying goodbye to your career. The show's success made him even more untouchable than before. The stories that would eventually surface paint a picture of systematic predation spanning decades. Anthony Rapp's courage in coming forward opened the floodgates, but his account was just the tip of the iceberg. What emerged was a pattern of behavior so consistent, so calculated, that it defied any explanation other than deliberate predation. Spacey would invite young actors to his home under the guise of mentorship. He would ply them with alcohol, isolate them from potential witnesses, and then assault them.
Actor Kevin Spacey has sexually assaulted my son. The victim, my son, was a starstruck, straight, 18-year-old young man. Kevin Spacey bought him drink after drink after drink. And when my son was drunk, Spacey made his move and sexually assaulted him. And I want to make it clear, this was a criminal act.
When victims tried to speak up, they found themselves blacklisted, their careers destroyed before they could even begin. The most chilling aspect of Spacey's methodology was how he weaponized his reputation. He wasn't just Kevin Spacey, the actor. He was Kevin Spacey, the artist, the mentor, the industry legend. Who would believe some unknown actor over a 2-time Oscar winner? Who would risk their career to challenge someone with that much influence? When Anthony Rapp finally spoke publicly about Spacey's assault in 2017, it was the catalyst for an avalanche that had been building for decades. Within days, more victims came forward. Then more. Then dozens more.
Kevin Spacey. Now 8 employees on the Netflix hit have reportedly accused Spacey of behavior that made him a predator on the set.
Production on the final season of the show has been shut down indefinitely as more disturbing allegations against the Oscar winner are coming to light.
Each account followed a similar pattern. Young, vulnerable men approached by Spacey under professional pretenses, groomed through a combination of career promises and alcohol, then assaulted when they were too intoxicated or intimidated to resist effectively. Spacey's response was as calculated as everything else he'd done. First, he tried to deflect by coming out as gay, as if sexual orientation could excuse sexual assault. When that failed, he checked into rehab, playing the troubled celebrity seeking help. When that didn't work, he simply disappeared, hoping the storm would pass. But this wasn't a typical Hollywood scandal that could be weathered with good PR and time. This was different. The Me Too movement had changed the game, and victims were no longer willing to stay silent to protect a predator's reputation. The most telling moment came during his 2023 court appearances in London, where he faced charges of sexual assault. Gone was the confident, charismatic performer who had commanded stages and screens for decades. In his place sat a trembling, desperate old man who finally understood that his carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation had collapsed forever. When he was acquitted on those particular charges, he broke down in tears, not from relief, but from the devastating realization that legal vindication couldn't restore what he'd lost. Perhaps most pathetically, Spacey has attempted to frame himself as a victim of cancel culture, as if systematic sexual assault could be dismissed as mere political correctness run amok. In rare interviews, he speaks about being punished without due process, conveniently ignoring the decades he spent silencing victims and destroying careers. His attempts at rehabilitation reveal the same narcissistic entitlement that enabled his predatory behavior in the first place. The financial ruin is particularly satisfying given how Spacey accumulated his wealth. Every dollar he earned was built on the suffering of others, extracted through a career that depended on silencing victims and intimidating witnesses. Watching that fortune evaporate feels like cosmic justice, the universe finally balancing the scales. The Kevin Spacey story isn't just about one predator's fall from grace. It's about how power corrupts, how institutions enable abuse, and how victims can finally find their voice when society decides to listen. For decades, Hollywood operated on an unspoken understanding. Talent excused behavior, power protected predators, and victims were expendable. The Kevin Spacey reckoning represents a fundamental shift in that calculus. His downfall sends a clear message to other powerful predators. Your time is up. No amount of talent, no level of success, no degree of influence can protect you from the consequences of your actions forever. The young men whose lives Spacey damaged deserved better than silence. They deserved justice. And while nothing can undo the trauma he caused, watching him lose everything he cared about, his career, his reputation, his fortune, provides a kind of poetic justice that feels deeply satisfying. The only tragedy in the Kevin Spacey story is that it took so long for justice to arrive, but arrive it did, and Hollywood and the world is better for it.